Don, can you talk about when you were brought in on the project, and how you worked with Robert on this?
Yeah, so that was like a quaint, 8 years ago, something like that, seven years ago, something like that. We actually, we met in Kiev. We were at a state-run film festival, and Bob had a documentary there, and I had a documentary there. And the whole place was weird, the whole vibe was weird. And we just
weird though.
Yeah, it was cool. It was fun, but we kind of gravitated toward each other as like the kind of odd out Americans in this weird spot. And we hit it off, and he started to talk about this Kurt Vonnegut documentary that he'd been working on for a long time. And I was like, oh my God, I love Kurt Vonnegut. And I'm like, when's it going to be done? And he's like, oh, well, soon. And then it probably was like a year later, 2 years later.
It was a good year at least that I called you up.
Yeah, and he had called me, and he'd seen a film I made called The Art of the Steal. I think it was in your Netflix queue.
Yes,
that's how old this shit is. It's like Kickstarter and Netflix queues.
This physical DVD queue.
Yeah, and he said, do you like Kurt Vonnegut, right? And I was like, I love Kurt Vonnegut. And he said, well, I really think I need to bring someone else in to kind of get me out of this jam, because I've been working on this documentary for, at that point it was, 20-something years, 30 years. And
stopped counting at that point.
And I think you had talked to Jerry Klinkowitz, who had said maybe there's a way to kind of put you into the movie to kind of like
there are a couple of
explain.
people who encouraged that, who said you need to tell that story. Don't hide from it. Tell it.
Yeah, so it was a very Vonnegut, kind of device, because Vonnegut's very self-aware, as he's, that's one of the things I loved about reading his books, and that's how we got started, and I think we tried to do like kind of a almost like a begging video. I think first
we did a kickstarting. We had decided that we would, because it was still, Don or not, there was still the issue of how to finance it. There was no money. By that time, Kickstarter was sort of taking off in these areas. Griffin Dunn had done a successful Kickstarter documentary. Kickstarter campaign for his film on his aunt Joan Didion. And I thought, well, maybe that's the way to go. So the first thing we did together was we filmed the begging video of me on camera begging people to send money. And
that didn't go so well.
No, it went very well.
We were able to get this Kickstarter campaign going, and it took off pretty well. I think we were a little naive, because I think we thought it was going to be very easy. Like, oh, it's Kurt Vonnegut. Everybody loves Kurt Vonnegut. People were going to be like, throwing money at us, and it was like pretty tight up until the end.
Yeah, it was a nail biter, because the first day. Now I have to say we got a lot of good press when we launched, and this was online press and conventional press. But the nice thing about the online press was that they always included the link to the begging video. So you'd read the article and you'd click, and there was me begging for money. So we really got a lot of press. So the first day we raised $50,000, and I think our goal was $250,000, and we raised $50,000. We thought, oh, this will be a breeze, and then the next day was like $3,000. I said, oh, I get it. So that's, it was.
And Kickstarter at the time, I don't know if it's still this way, but if you didn't reach your goal,
you didn't get any of the money.
So it was pretty dramatic.
When it was finished, we raised $300,000.
Yeah.
Robert, let me ask you a question about Vonnegut's writing. A lot of people come to Vonnegut when they're young and are turned on by his writing, as we describe in the film. I wondered, when you read his writing now, do you see things different in it than you did when you were turned on by it?
It's a different perspective now when I read it, and Nanny will enjoy hearing this. I probably told her, is that I responded so much to his work because it was this combination of dealing with truly heady thoughts. I mean, attempting to answer, those big existential questions like, what are we doing here? What's our purpose? Or socially oriented questions. Why do we treat each other so horribly? Why are we destroying the planet? But everything was filtered through this very kind of Midwestern, Indiana sort of sensibility, the sense of humor. And I liked that blend of the serious issues and the entertainment value. But after a while, I'd read all the books. I always read the new ones when they came out, but I started to think of him more as a friend at a certain point than that author. So, especially after he died, so much of our relationship was just based on laughter. It was a very light, as you see from the laughter, it was a very light relationship, because there was no family baggage. You know, other people's parents are always easier than your own, right? So we had no history, no baggage. We were just a lot of laughing, jokes, a little bit of drinking, you know, puns, everything. And I started to think of him as kind of an idiot because this would be a favorite joke of his. He'd say something like, "What is the white stuff in bird poop?" So, I don't know, what's the white stuff in bird poop? He'd say, "Well, that's bird poop too." This to him was a great joke that could have him laughing for days, you know. And so I thought of him as this kind of this idiot friend of mine. And then I'd go back and I'd pick up Sirens of Titan or whatever, and I'd say, how did that guy write this? I now was coming at it from a different angle, and to reconcile what a brilliant writer I still think he is, and the concepts that he takes on, and just how great his prose is with this very silly man that I knew was to this day is a little hard to reconcile.
Let me take some questions from the audience.
By the way, I don't use idiot as a pejorative. Some of my best friends are idiots.
Up in the back there.
Thank you for a great film, very holistically showing an awesome writer. My question is kind of artistically, can you talk a little bit more about the process and maybe the challenges, difficulty where you know, I guess you wanted to do a documentary on Kurt Vonnegut, but then it became, you were the archivist and you became friends. Was there some point, can you talk about the difficulty and the challenges artistically and creatively with making the film?
Well, it had all the usual challenges of any film, any creation, be it documentary or narrative, which is just what's the story you want to tell, which I thought I knew going in. I wound up telling a different story. But, you know, in my case, my attitude towards my documentaries is just get all the information you can, all the interviews, all the footage, all the photos, bring it in, and then the writing process is really the editing process. You figure out what you need to tell and how to tell it and how to structure it. That's with any creation, and trying to get it down to fighting weight. I feel this is a very indulgent length at 2 hours and 7 minutes, although people don't seem to be complaining about it, so I'll let that go. But that's sort of the thing that akin to any work. But this had the special dilemma of once I was talked into being in the film, how to tell that story, and that's where Don came in. But getting the balance right was always the issue, because Don and Demian, their thing was, you know, it needs more of you, it needs more of you, and I kept saying, no, it needs less of me, cut me way down to the bare minimum. And when we did that, people seemed to like the device. They thought it was a good device, but they would say, you know, you disappeared for 25 minutes, and then when you came back on, it was kind of startling. We had forgotten about you. So then the challenge was how to keep that secondary story, the meta story, alive, but without overindulging and having my mug on screen too much. So that give and take was a big part of it. Wouldn't you say?
It was really, I think that was the key. Was I kept trying to, I thought that Bob's inclusion in the film, if you're going to commit to it, you had to commit to it. And if he didn't want himself in it, he shouldn't have put himself in it. So we were kind of always finding that balance of...
And I would have been fine with that. There were times when I said, I think this is a mistake, we should just cut me out.
Yeah, a lot of times. And, you know, so we kept trying to find that balance. And I do think, like, you know, what ultimately transpired, which is, I think, one of the most beautiful things in the movie is, you know, Bob's journey and it's really Kurt's, you know, lessons in how, you know, what he wrote about. Basically gives Bob the coping mechanisms to deal with the situation that he's got to deal with Linda. So it becomes this beautiful meditation on life and just, I think, like a perfect thing for, you know, what this film is really about. And that's something that has resonated with me, certainly, like, you know, as we're all getting older and you start thinking about life, you think about, like, what, you know, how much time do you have, and, you know, this idea of time, this idea of, like, living, what it means to, what it all means. I think that's just, like, really what this film is about. And I think, like, you know, by Bob being able to kind of put himself in it and tell his story is really, it's also Kurt's story. It's also how, you know, the writing, it's kind of full circle how it all comes together, you know.
Yeah, if it had just been, oh, Kurt and I were good friends and he liked me and he was my pal, that would have been disastrous. The fact that the real underpinning of what that led to, the things you're talking about, is really what made it worthwhile to attempt.
And there was like 3 other scenes of you crying that I was pushing for.
Yeah, that was the other
They're
thing.
really good, really
the
emotional.
crying
Yeah, and
thing,
I'm still bummed you took that thing about the Make Me.
I cannot read that passage from Breakfast of Champions where he tells Kilgore Trout that he's his creator, and Kilgore Trout says, "Make me young, make me young." I can't read that without crying. And this guy made me read it on camera. And when I said, "You're not using it, you're not using it." And fortunately, we came up with this animation of that sequence, which was much better than me sobbing on screen. So I won that one. But it is a very touching passage.
Yeah, in the corner there.
Thank you.
So if anyone didn't hear the question, he's asking specifically about that phrase, "so it goes," and how you interpret it.
Look, it's all subjective. There's no right or wrong. What we hear in the film are a couple of people giving their take on it. You have your take on it. Nothing is correct or incorrect. It's all subjective. And, as far as the news piece at the end, that's just somebody in a room writing copy for a newscaster to read quickly, to get on the air. So that's sort of meaning. Yeah, satirist, I would say, yeah, he was a satirist. He was a lot of things, but I don't have any specific take on it, and these kinds of questions make me feel like I'm back in school, so I get a little creeped out.
So, Robert,
That's why I left college, by the way, because...
as we wrap this up, I want to ask, this is the film's world premiere after such a long time. How are you feeling today about it?
No, I won't give you the joke answer. I'll give you I'm really glad to have it finished, needless to say. I'm still going through that decompression period. You probably do with your films. Any of you who are writing or making films or whatever probably do this, but this has been so long that I go through that period where I might find something new about Kurt or read something new or see a clip or something, think, "Oh wow, I got to use that. How do I fit that in? Where will I put that?" And then it's like, "Bob, stop! You're finished. The film is finished. It's done." And that's very satisfying to not have to worry about that. I want to tell you one thing that relates to this is, a book is something that you write and you hand in to your publisher, and it goes on the shelf and it's always there, and people will buy it or not, but it's done. Now a play is something else. It's a living, breathing thing that every time you put it on, it has a new life. It's resuscitated. So when I did Happy Birthday Wanda June in LA in 2001 with my wife in the lead, which was Kurt's suggestion, he was almost every day faxing me new endings for the play because he never felt he nailed it. He was, even when it was off Broadway and then on Broadway, he was always trying to get the ending right and never felt he nailed it. And he kept sending me new ideas for the ending. And finally I said, "Kurt, stop it. It's done. We're going to use what was in the original play." And it just goes to show that, I think any writer is always still trying to fix it. It'd be like, going into the Louvre, sneaking in after hours and taking a little paintbrush and trying to, maybe get this right, get Mona's smile just right. But anyway, so I'm glad it's done and that it's on the shelf and I don't have to think about it anymore.
Well, we're really proud to show it. You're the first audience to see it. I want to thank you for coming. I do want to ask you to, if you can exit the theater quickly, because we do have another film coming in. But I hope you get to see more films the next 7 days at Doc NYC. Thank you for being here. Thanks especially to Don Argott and Robert Weide.
And also, the film is coming out November 19th on VOD and in theaters.
Next Friday. It'll be playing here.
Tell your friends.
As of the 19th and on VOD. And for all of you desperate to ask a question, so long as it doesn't go on too long, we'll hang out a little bit and come out and, if there's something you're dying to know, come ask.